Amira Johnson walks into her new high school, cane tapping against the floor. She just wants to fit in, but instead, laughter fills the cafeteria as Chase Miller and his friends trip her, steal her cane, and post the video online. Humiliated in front of the entire school, Amira hides her pain, until her father, Marcus Johnson, sees the bruises. But Marcus isn't just any father. He's a Navy SEAL. What starts as cruel laughter soon spirals into a war these boys never expected. Because every prank, every shove, every video online has consequences they can't escape. Now, the question is, what happens when a blind girl learns to fight back, and her enemies finally realize who her father really is? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning air bit through Amira Johnson's jacket as she approached the entrance to her new high school. Her white cane swept back and forth across the concrete, each tap echoing in the crisp autumn breeze. The sounds of students chattering and lockers clanging filtered through the double doors ahead. Amira took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. She'd done this before. New school, new building, new challenges. Her fingers tightened around the familiar grip of her cane as she pushed through the heavy door. The hallway assaulted her senses with its cacophony of sounds: squeaking sneakers on linoleum, loud conversations bouncing off metal lockers, and the shuffle of hundreds of feet. Amira focused on the tap of her cane, using it to build a mental map of her surroundings. 3 steps forward, slight right turn, 20 paces to the first classroom. "Oh my God, look at her!" a girl's voice whispered nearby, not nearly quiet enough. "I can't believe they're letting a blind kid just walk around by herself. What if she runs into something?" another voice answered with a snicker. "Or someone." Amira's jaw clenched, but she kept moving. The whispers weren't new. They followed her everywhere, like shadows she couldn't see but always felt. She concentrated on counting her steps, on memorizing the subtle changes in floor texture that would help her navigate later. "Hey," a soft voice said to her left. "Do you need help finding your first class?" Amira turned toward the voice, gentle, genuine, without the usual undertone of pity she'd grown to recognize. "I'm okay, thanks," she replied, more curtly than she'd intended. "I can manage." "I'm Leah," the voice continued, undeterred. "If you change your mind, I'm happy to help. No pressure, though." Something in Leah's tone made Amira pause. "I appreciate it," she said, softening slightly. "But I need to learn the layout myself." The morning classes passed in a blur of new voices, new spaces to memorize, and the constant undercurrent of whispered comments. By lunch, Amira's head was pounding from the effort of processing everything around her. The cafeteria was the worst, a massive space full of echoing voices and the clatter of trays. She made her way carefully between tables, counting steps, and listening for gaps in the noise that might indicate an empty seat. The smell of mystery meat and overcooked vegetables grew stronger as she approached the serving line. That's when she heard them. A group of boys, their laughter carrying a sharp edge that made her stomach tighten. The sound of Letterman jackets rustling told her they were athletes, probably the popular crowd she'd been warned about. "Watch this," one voice said, deep and smug. "Hey, blind girl, there's an empty seat right here." Amira ignored them, continuing her careful navigation through the cafeteria. But suddenly her cane hit something solid. A leg, deliberately stuck out in her path. She stumbled, barely catching her balance. "Oops," another voice said, higher and nasally. "Guess your stick missed that one." More laughter erupted, closer now. "Come on, Chase," the nasal voice continued. "Show her where to sit." "Right here, sweetheart," the first voice, Chase, called out. "Just follow my voice. Marco! Polo!" Heat crept up Amira's neck as other students joined in the laughter. She could picture them all staring, could feel the weight of their eyes on her. Her fingers cramped around her cane's handle. "What's wrong?" Chase taunted. "Can't take a joke? We're just trying to help." "Yeah," a third voice chimed in. "Tyler here's a great seeing-eye dog. Aren't you, Ty?" The boy named Tyler made exaggerated barking sounds, sending another wave of laughter through the cafeteria. Amira stood frozen, her chest tight with humiliation and anger. "I got it all on video," the nasal voice announced proudly. "This is going to be epic, Chase." "You hear that, blind girl?" Chase called out. "You're gonna be famous. Well, more famous than you already are, being the only blind kid brave enough to grace us with your presence." Amira's cheeks burned as she gripped her cane tighter. The urge to say something, to fight back, rose in her throat, like bile. But years of experience had taught her that would only make things worse. Without a word, she turned and started making her way toward the cafeteria exit, each tap of her cane accompanied by fresh peals of laughter from Chase and his friends. Behind her, she could hear them still going. "Aw, don't leave!" Chase called out. "We've got so many more games we can play." "Yeah," Tyler added between barks. "Like pin the tail on the blind girl." Ethan's nasal voice cut through the noise. "Make sure you get her good side for the video, guys." The laughter followed her all the way to the door, each step feeling like a mile as she fought to keep her composure. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She wouldn't let them know how much their words stung. But her white-knuckled grip on her cane betrayed the storm of emotions raging inside her as she made her quiet exit from the cafeteria. The cafeteria bustled with its usual chaos as Amira found her way to a corner table. She'd chosen this spot carefully, far from the main traffic areas, close to the wall where she could keep her back protected. Her fingers traced the edge of her lunch tray, mapping out where everything sat. Apple to the right, sandwich in the middle, milk carton to the left. The noise level rose and fell like waves, and Amira tried to lose herself in the rhythm of ordinary lunch conversation. But her ears stayed alert for a particular sound: the rustle of Letterman jackets, the confident stride of expensive sneakers on linoleum. "Just eat quickly and get out," she whispered to herself, picking up her sandwich. The bread felt slightly stale under her fingers, but she didn't care. Every bite meant she was closer to escaping. Then she heard it. That familiar laugh, getting closer. Chase Miller's voice carried across the cafeteria like he owned it. "Look who's hiding in the corner, guys!" Amira's heart rate picked up, but she kept her head down, taking another bite of her sandwich. Maybe if she ignored them, they'd get bored and move on. "It's rude not to say hello," Ethan's nasal voice added. 3 sets of footsteps approached her table. The bench creaked as someone sat down heavily beside her. "Hi, blind girl," Tyler's deep voice rumbled next to her ear. "Sitting all alone? Don't you have any friends?" Amira set her sandwich down, her appetite vanishing. "Leave me alone," she said quietly, but firmly. "Oh, she speaks!" Chase's voice came from directly across the table. "And here we thought you might be deaf too." "Yeah, we were worried," Ethan chimed in. "Especially after you ran away yesterday. That wasn't very friendly of you." Amira's hand instinctively moved to her cane, propped against the table beside her. But before she could grab it, she felt it being snatched away. "What's this thing made of, anyway?" Chase asked, and Amira could hear him tapping it against something. "Seems pretty flimsy." "Give it back," Amira said, her voice stronger now. She stood up, reaching out, but Chase laughed and moved away. "You want it?" he taunted. "Come and get it. It's right here." He waved it above her head. She could hear it swooshing through the air. The cafeteria had grown quieter. People were watching now. Amira could feel the weight of their stares, hear the anticipatory whispers. "I said give it back," she repeated, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "Or what?" Tyler stood up beside her, his bulk making her feel small. "You gonna tell on us?" "Maybe she'll use her super hearing powers," Ethan suggested with a laugh. "That's a thing, right? Blind people get superpowers to make up for being broken." Amira's fists clenched at her sides. "I'm not broken," she said through gritted teeth. "Could have fooled me," Chase replied. There was a sudden movement, and Amira's lunch tray went flying. She heard the clatter of plastic hitting the floor, felt drops of milk splash against her legs. The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Somewhere in the distance, she heard a teacher's voice call out half-heartedly, "All right, everyone settle down." "Oops," Chase said, not sounding sorry at all. "Looks like you made a mess. Better clean that up." Amira stood frozen, humiliation burning through her body. She could hear phones clicking, people taking pictures or videos, documenting her shame for their entertainment. "Come on, guys," another teacher called out, sounding bored. "Let's keep it down." "Here's your stick back," Chase said, and Amira's cane clattered to the floor somewhere near her feet. She knelt down, hands shaking as they searched the sticky floor. Her fingers brushed through spilled milk, squashed fruit, and the remains of her lunch before finally finding the familiar grip of her cane. "Oh, look!" Ethan's voice came from above. "She's cleaning it up just like we asked. Such a good girl." More laughter rippled through the cafeteria. Amira grabbed her cane and stood up quickly, but her shoe slipped in the spilled milk. She stumbled, catching herself on the table's edge. Her arms scraped against something sharp, probably a bolt sticking out from the bench. "Everyone, back to your lunches," a teacher finally intervened, but the damage was done. The cafeteria buzzed with excited chatter, phones still clicking away. Amira clutched her cane to her chest and turned, walking as quickly as she dared toward the exit. She could hear Chase and his friends high-fiving, their victory celebration echoing in her ears. The hallway felt endless as she counted her steps to the nearest bathroom. Inside, she found her way to the last stall, locked the door, and finally let herself break down. Hot tears rolled down her cheeks as her fingers gently probed the tender spot on her arm where she'd hit the bench. A bruise was already forming. She could feel the raised bump under her skin. The bathroom door creaked open, and Amira held her breath, trying to silence her sobs. Footsteps moved past her stall, accompanied by giggling voices discussing what had just happened in the cafeteria. She waited until they left, before letting out a shaky breath. Her fingers traced the bruise again, as fresh tears fell. The physical pain was nothing compared to the weight of humiliation pressing down on her chest, threatening to crush her. In this quiet stall, away from the cruel laughter and indifferent teachers, Amira let herself feel the full depth of her shame and isolation. The evening sun cast long shadows through the Johnson family's dining room windows as Amira sat at the table, pushing food around her plate. The familiar scents of her mother's cooking, seasoned chicken, roasted vegetables, and fresh cornbread, usually brought comfort. But tonight, her stomach felt tight with anxiety. "How was school today, sweetheart?" Danielle asked, passing the basket of cornbread. Amira forced a smile, grateful that her parents couldn't see her expression clearly in the dimming light. "Fine. Just busy with assignments." Marcus sat quietly, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. His eyes lingered on the way Amira held her arm close to her body, the slight wince when she reached for her water glass. "The new history teacher? Still giving those long lectures?" he asked casually, his tone light but his gaze sharp. "Yeah," Amira replied, relieved to have a safe topic. "Mr. Patterson loves hearing himself talk." Danielle chuckled, but Marcus noticed how his daughter's laugh didn't quite reach her eyes. The slight tremor in her hands as she cut her chicken didn't escape his attention either. Not much did, after years of reading subtle signs in hostile territories. "Did you use those hallway navigation tricks we practiced?" Marcus asked, watching her reaction carefully. They helped, Amira said quickly. Too quickly. The school's pretty easy to figure out now. The conversation drifted to safer topics. Danielle's busy day at the hospital, Marcus's plans for his leave time, the upcoming weekend. Amira contributed just enough to avoid suspicion, but Marcus caught every slight flinch, every carefully controlled movement that spoke of hidden pain. After dinner, Amira retreated to her room, citing homework. Danielle headed to the kitchen to clean up, while Marcus settled in his study, opening his laptop. He'd noticed some of Amira's classmates mentioning her school on social media earlier, teenage bragging that might shed light on his daughter's strange behavior. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. The videos and audio clips were everywhere, shared with laughing emoji and cruel comments. His daughter's voice, strong but trembling. "Give it back." The sound of a lunch tray clattering, followed by uproarious laughter. A boy's mocking tone. "You gonna tell on us?" Marcus's hands clenched into fists as he listened, his military training the only thing keeping his breathing steady. He recognized the main voice. Chase Miller, the quarterback everyone in town praised as their golden boy. The same kid whose father was always bragging at the local bar about his son's football scholarship prospects. More clips followed. The sound of his daughter stumbling. More laughter. Phones clicking to capture her humiliation. Teachers' voices in the background, barely intervening. The comments under the posts were worse. Jokes about his daughter's blindness, racist remarks hidden behind "just kidding" and "no offense." Marcus closed his laptop slowly, deliberately, the way he used to clean his weapon after a mission. His jaw tightened as pieces clicked into place. The bruises, the forced smiles, the careful way she held herself at dinner. His daughter, his bright, strong girl, was being tortured at school while adults looked the other way. He moved through the quiet house, footsteps silent from years of training. Outside Amira's room, he could hear the soft sound of muffled crying. His heart clenched. How many nights had she cried alone, thinking she had to handle this by herself? Marcus knocked gently on her door. "Amira, can I come in?" There was a quick shuffling sound, then Amira's voice, slightly hoarse. "Yeah, Dad." He opened the door to find her sitting on her bed, hastily wiped tears still visible on her cheeks. Her phone lay face down beside her, probably playing the same cruel videos he'd just discovered. Marcus sat down next to her, the bed dipping slightly under his weight. The bruise on her arm was more visible now in her short-sleeved pajamas, a dark mark that made his combat-trained muscles tense with protective anger. "I heard what happened today," he said softly, watching as Amira's shoulders stiffened. "And I suspect it wasn't the first time." Amira's hands twisted in her lap. "I didn't want to worry you and Mom," she whispered. "You're both so busy, and I thought I could handle it." Marcus placed his hand gently over hers, stilling their nervous movement. "You don't have to fight this alone anymore." The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Marcus's gentle knock roused Amira from sleep. "Time to get up, sweetheart," he called softly through the door. Amira groaned, her hand finding her clock. "Dad, it's 5:30. Best time to train. Meet me in the backyard in 10 minutes. Confused but curious, Amira pulled on sweatpants and a hoodie. The morning air was crisp as she carefully made her way down the back steps, her cane tapping against the wooden boards. "Leave the cane by the steps," Marcus said. His voice came from the center of their small yard, where the grass was still wet with dew. "Come to me. Listen to my voice." Amira hesitated, then set her cane down. She took tentative steps forward, arms slightly extended. "Stop." Marcus's command was firm but gentle. "Don't reach out. Listen. What do you hear?" Amira stood still, focusing like her dad had taught her during their nature walks. You're breathing. It's coming from about 15 feet ahead. And your shoes, they're squeaking a little on the grass. Good. Now, I'm going to walk around you. Tell me where I am based on sound alone. His footsteps moved slowly, first to her left, then behind her, then right. Amira turned her head, tracking him. You're circling me. Now you're at my 4 o'clock. Now 6. Now 9. Excellent. In a crowded space like your school cafeteria, footsteps tell you everything. Let's practice something else. I'm going to try to grab your arm. Very gently. Your job is to step away when you hear me coming. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus approached from different angles. At first, Amira flinched and moved too late, but gradually she began to anticipate his movements, stepping aside just as his hand would have reached her. You're getting it, Marcus praised. Now, if someone does grab you, he took her arm firmly but carefully. Turn into the grip, not away. Like this. He guided her through the motion, showing how to break free using the attacker's own momentum. They practiced this move repeatedly. Amira's initial awkwardness gave way to smoother movements as muscle memory began to build. Her breathing grew more confident with each successful escape. Remember, Marcus said, demonstrating another hold break, you don't need to see to defend yourself. Your other senses are sharper than most people's. Use that advantage. The sky brightened as they worked, birds beginning their morning songs. Sweat dampened Amira's hair despite the cool air, but she felt more energized than tired. Last thing for today, Marcus said. If someone comes at you from behind. He moved quietly, but Amira heard the slight rustle of his clothes. She stepped sideways, just as he'd taught her, and his grab missed completely. Perfect, pride filled his voice. You're a natural at this. Inside, the smell of coffee and toast filled the kitchen. Danielle was already in her scrubs, preparing for her early hospital shift. You two are up early, she observed, sliding plates of scrambled eggs across the counter. Amira sat down, muscles pleasantly sore, a new awareness of her surroundings humming through her body. Each bite of breakfast felt like fuel for something important, not just another routine morning. Just some father-daughter time, Marcus said casually, but he squeezed Amira's shoulder as he passed. At school, Amira walked differently. Her cane moved with purpose, not hesitation. She focused on the sounds around her, footsteps, voices, the subtle echoes that helped her map the space. The whispers still followed her, but they seemed less important now. In second period, Leah Parker slid into the seat next to her. You seem different today, she said quietly. Different how? I don't know. Taller, maybe? Like you're not trying to disappear anymore. Amira allowed herself a small smile. Maybe I'm just tired of disappearing. The day wasn't perfect. She still heard Chase and his friends snickering in the hallway, still felt the weight of stairs she couldn't see. But something had shifted inside her. Each footstep she heard now carried information. Distance, direction, intention. The school's layout felt clearer in her mind, like a map drawn in sound and memory. That evening, exhausted but satisfied, Amira sat on her bed while Marcus placed her cane carefully on her nightstand. The familiar tap of wood against wood held a new meaning now, not just a tool for navigation, but a reminder of her own capability. We'll train again tomorrow, Marcus said, his voice carrying the same steady assurance she'd heard that morning. Amira smiled faintly, feeling the day's lessons settled in her muscles like a foundation being laid. For the first time since the bullying began, hope flickered in her chest. Small but growing, like the first light of dawn they'd trained under. The gymnasium buzzed with excitement as students filed into the bleachers for the afternoon pep rally. Colorful banners hung from the walls, and the school mascot, a fierce-looking eagle, pranced around the polished floor. "Are you sure about this?" Amira asked Leah as they found seats near the middle of the bleachers. The noise echoed off the walls, making it harder for Amira to track individual sounds. "Everyone's here," Leah assured her. "It might be good to feel like part of things for once." She described the decorations, the cheerleaders in their blue and white uniforms, the way the basketball team sat in a row of honor near the front. Amira nodded, trying to focus on the familiar training exercises her father had taught her. Count the exits by sound, the heavy gym doors creaking. Map the space through echoes. Voices bouncing off walls told her the room's shape, but the chaos of so many voices made it challenging. Principal Williams's voice boomed through the speakers, welcoming everyone and praising the football team's recent victory. The crowd cheered, the sound washing over Amira like a wave. She gripped her cane tighter. "And now," the principal announced, "our star quarterback Chase Miller would like to say a few words about school spirit." The applause was deafening. Amira heard Chase's footsteps across the gym floor, the squeak of his sneakers against the polished wood. Something felt wrong about his movement. Too deliberate, too theatrical. "Thanks, Principal Williams," Chase's voice filled the gym. "You know, our school talks a lot about diversity and inclusion, about welcoming everyone." His tone dripped with false sincerity. Amira's stomach tightened. "We've got a special new student this year," Chase continued. "Someone really brave. Someone who shows up every day, despite her challenges." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Leah grabbed Amira's hand. "We should go," she whispered. But Amira sat frozen, her father's training forgotten as panic gripped her chest. She heard phones being pulled out, cases clicking open, cameras being pointed. "Let me demonstrate," Chase said. There was shuffling, then exaggerated tapping sounds. "Oh no, where am I going?" His voice took on a mocking, helpless tone. "Can't see anything. Somebody help!" The gymnasium erupted in laughter. Amira heard phones buzzing as videos were instantly shared, the sound of messages spreading her humiliation beyond these walls. "And when she tries to eat lunch?" Chase continued, but Amira couldn't hear the rest over the blood rushing in her ears. Her face burned as hundreds of students laughed, their cruel amusement echoing off the walls until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "That's enough, Mr. Miller," Principal Williams finally interrupted, but his tone carried more amusement than reproach. "Back to school spirit, please." Amira stood abruptly, her cane knocking against the bleachers. The sound drew more laughter. Leah tried to help her, but Amira pushed past, needing to escape. Her careful mapping of the space vanished in her panic. She stumbled down the bleachers, every misstep drawing more snickers. "Watch out!" someone called mockingly. "Oh, wait, she can't!" The rest of the day passed in a blur. Amira sat through her classes, hearing whispers and giggles, the sounds of videos being rewatched and shared. Even teachers seemed to be suppressing smiles, treating the whole thing as harmless fun. At home that evening, Amira sat cross-legged on her bed, her phone's screen reader delivering blow after blow. Social media exploded with clips from the pep rally, each share and comment cutting deeper. "OMG, did you see this?" the robotic voice read. "Chase is hilarious. Best pep rally ever. That blind girl's face, though." The phone kept reading comments, each one making Amira's shoulders hunch further. Videos auto-played in succession, forcing her to relive the moment over and over. Chase's mocking voice, the crowd's laughter, her own stumbling escape, all preserved forever online. A floorboard creaked in the doorway. Amira didn't need to ask who it was. She recognized her father's breathing, the subtle weight of his presence. Marcus stood silently, watching his daughter curl into herself as the phone continued its cruel recitation. "Everyone loved it," the screen reader announced another comment. "Chase Miller, legend!" Amira felt the rage radiating from her father, a controlled fury that seemed to make the air thicker. She heard his fingers flex, imagined his jaw clenching as another video started playing. The sound of Chase's exaggerated tapping filled her small bedroom. Marcus's breathing changed, slower, more deliberate, the way it did when he was containing strong emotion. Neither of them spoke as the videos continued, each replay driving home how public, how permanent this humiliation had become. A notification sound pinged. "Now trending in your area," the screen reader announced. Another wave of shares, more cruel comments. Amira's fingers trembled as they moved across the screen, unable to stop herself from scrolling through the growing mountain of mockery. Marcus remained in the doorway, his silence more potent than any words. His daughter's pain filled the space between them, along with the echoing sounds of her public shame playing again and again through the phone's speakers. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows as the Johnson family gathered around the breakfast table. The local news played on the small TV mounted on the wall, its volume low but clear enough to hear the anchor's voice. A controversial video from Mason Heights High School has sparked heated debate in our community, the anchor announced. The familiar footage began playing. Chase Miller at the microphone, his exaggerated movements, the crowd's laughter echoing through the gymnasium. Amira's hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug, the warmth failing to stop her fingers from trembling. Beside her, Danielle reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "You don't have to watch this, sweetheart," Danielle said softly. "I can't see it anyway," Amira replied, her voice bitter. "But I can hear it. Everyone can hear it." Marcus stood at the counter, his coffee forgotten as he watched the news segment. His massive frame seemed to grow tenser with each passing second, like a spring being wound too tight. "Local parent groups are divided over the incident," the anchor continued. The screen switched to interviews outside the school. A woman in expensive workout clothes spoke into the microphone, her smile dismissive. "Kids will be kids," she said, waving her hand. "My son was there, and he said it was just a joke. Everyone's so sensitive these days." "That's Karen Miller," Amira said quietly. "Chase's mom." Marcus's coffee mug clicked sharply against the counter. Danielle shot him a warning look, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen. Another parent appeared, this one more hesitant. "It wasn't right," the man said, glancing nervously around. "But maybe it's better not to make a big deal out of it. You know how these things can get blown out of proportion." The segment ended with Principal Williams assuring viewers that the school was reviewing the situation. His practiced smile never wavered as he spoke about learning opportunities and teenage growth. "Turn it off," Marcus said, his voice controlled but carrying an edge that made both Amira and Danielle look up. Danielle reached for the remote, and the kitchen fell into heavy silence. Later that morning, Marcus pushed a shopping cart through the local grocery store, his movements precise and measured. The whispers followed him down every aisle. "That's the blind girl's father," a woman muttered to her friend by the produce section. "You know, from that video? I heard they're threatening to sue the school." Another voice drifted from the cereal aisle. Always stirring up trouble. Marcus selected items with careful control, his military training evident in how he maintained his composure. At the meat counter, he overheard two men in golf shirts talking loudly enough to be sure he could hear. "These people move to our town and expect special treatment," one said. "My boy's on the football team with Chase. Says the girl's got an attitude problem." "What do they want?" the other replied. "The kid was just having fun. Now they're trying to ruin his future over a joke." Marcus placed his order for chicken breasts, his voice perfectly level. The butcher, an older man with kind eyes, wrapped the meat with extra care. "My granddaughter's in your Amira's class," he said quietly, handing over the package. "She told me what really happened. It wasn't right, what they did." Marcus nodded, accepting both the meat and the small gesture of support. As he turned away, he caught more whispered comments. "Did you see how big he is? No wonder they're all walking on eggshells. Someone needs to tell them this isn't that kind of neighborhood." At the checkout, the cashier, a young black woman, scanned his items with deliberate slowness. "My little brother showed me that video," she said softly. "Made me sick to my stomach. Some folks around here think they can do whatever they want." Outside the store, Marcus loaded the groceries into his car, every movement controlled and precise. A group of teenagers in red varsity jackets lounged by the entrance, their laughter cutting off as they noticed him. One nudged another, whispering something that made them snicker. Marcus drove home, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The town's true face had revealed itself, not just in the cruelty of children, but in the casual dismissal by adults who should know better. That evening, after Amira had gone to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with Danielle. The day's grocery receipts lay forgotten between them as he cleaned his service knife, an old habit that helped him think. "You heard them today," he said, his voice low and steady. "All those people defending those boys, making excuses, treating our daughter like she's nothing." Danielle nodded, her nurse's hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "It's not just about the video anymore," she agreed. "It's about who gets to hurt people and get away with it." Marcus tested the knife's edge with his thumb, his movements precise and measured. "They think their money and status put them above consequences. They think their children can humiliate our daughter, and we'll just accept it." "What are you thinking?" Danielle asked, knowing her husband's tone. Marcus set the knife down, meeting his wife's eyes across the table. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty as he said, "This isn't just bullying. It's entitlement, and it ends now." The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., barely audible in the pre-dawn quiet. Amira felt her father's gentle hand on her shoulder, shaking her awake. "Time to train," Marcus whispered. Amira groaned but sat up, her muscles still aching from yesterday's session. She pulled on her workout clothes, soft sweatpants and a loose t-shirt, while Marcus waited in the hallway. The backyard grass was wet with dew beneath her bare feet. Cool morning air brushed against her face as Marcus guided her to their training spot. Birds were just beginning to wake, their first calls breaking through the silence. "Today we're going to work on something new," Marcus said, his voice carrying that calm authority she knew from years of military service. "Your hearing is already sharp. Now we'll make it tactical." He placed her cane in her hands, but differently than she usually held it. "This isn't just a navigation tool anymore," he explained. "In the right position, it's a defensive weapon." Amira felt his hands adjusting her grip, showing her how to hold the cane at an angle. "But I don't want to hurt anyone," she protested. "This isn't about hurting people," Marcus replied. "It's about being ready when they try to hurt you. Remember what Chase and his friends did with your cane?" Amira's jaw tightened at the memory. "They took it, waved it around like a joke. Next time, they'll think twice." Marcus moved behind her. "Now, I'm going to walk around you. Tell me where I am by the sound of my footsteps." His boots made soft impressions in the grass as he circled her. Amira turned her head slightly, tracking the sound. 10 o'clock, she said. "Good. Now?" He shifted position. 2 o'clock. No, 3. They continued this way for several minutes, Marcus moving faster, his footsteps getting lighter. Amira's accuracy improved with each round. "Perfect," he said. "Now we add movement. When you hear me approach, use the cane to create space. Remember the blocking positions we practiced?" Amira nodded, adjusting her stance. Marcus's footsteps came from behind. She pivoted, bringing the cane up in a smooth arc that caught his approaching arm. "Excellent!" Pride filled his voice. Again, but faster this time. They moved through the drills as the sun began to rise. Amira's movements became more fluid, more confident. The cane felt different in her hands now, not just a tool for navigation, but an extension of her strength. After an hour, the back door opened. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted out as Danielle called, "Breakfast is ready." Inside, Amira sat at the kitchen table, her body tired but humming with energy. She could hear her mother moving around the kitchen, placing plates down. "You're getting really good out there," Danielle said, squeezing Amira's shoulder as she passed. "I was watching from the window." "Dad's a good teacher," Amira replied, reaching for her fork. The bacon was crispy, just how she liked it. "Your mother was pretty good with a scalpel in nursing school," Marcus added. "Maybe we should get her out there too." Danielle laughed. "I'll stick to bandaging up your training bumps and bruises." They ate together, the kitchen warm with morning light and family conversation. For the first time in weeks, Amira felt her shoulders relax. The whispers and stares at school still waited, but they seemed less powerful now. "I have something for you," Marcus said after breakfast. He pressed a small object into her hand. Smooth, cylindrical, about the size of a lipstick tube. "What is it?" Amira ran her fingers over it. "A personal alarm," he explained. "Military grade. If anyone tries to take your cane again, press the button. It's loud enough to wake the dead." Amira slipped it into her pocket, touched by his thoughtfulness. The weight of it was reassuring, like carrying a piece of her father's protection. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes and quiet hallways. Amira noticed she was walking differently now, head high, cane moving with purpose. A few times she heard Chase and his friends nearby, but their usual taunts seemed subdued. That night, lying in bed, Amira's muscles ached from the morning's training. But it was a good ache, the kind that meant getting stronger. Her fingers found the personal alarm on her nightstand, then moved to her cane propped against the wall. Both felt different now. Not symbols of disability, but tools of empowerment. For the first time since starting at Mason Heights High, she smiled as she drifted off to sleep. The bullies' laughter still echoed in her memory, but it was fainter now, overshadowed by the sound of her father's patient instruction and her mother's proud words. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more whispers, more sideways glances. But tonight, in the quiet of her room, Amira felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. The crackling of burning wood mixed with teenage chatter as Amira stood at the edge of the party, her cane tapping nervously against the ground. Heat from the bonfire warmed her face, and she could smell burning marshmallows and hear the pop of opening sodas. "I'm glad you came," Leah said beside her, describing the scene. "There's probably 40 people here, all spread out around this huge fire pit." Amira nodded, still unsure about accepting the invitation. After weeks of training with her father, she felt stronger, but public spaces still made her uneasy. The sound of Chase's familiar laugh cutting through the crowd didn't help. "Want some hot chocolate?" Leah asked. "I can grab us both some from the drinks table." "Sure," Amira said, grateful for Leah's friendship. "I'll wait here." As Leah's footsteps faded, Amira focused on mapping the space around her. The fire pit was about 15 feet ahead, its heat helping her gauge distance. Groups of students clustered in circles, their conversations creating a map of sound she could navigate. Then the atmosphere shifted. The chatter nearest her died down, replaced by whispers and snickers she knew too well. Heavy footsteps approached, 3 sets, moving with purpose. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence." Chase's voice dripped with mock courtesy. She could smell his cologne, too strong and too close. "Leave me alone, Chase," Amira said firmly, remembering her father's lessons about projecting confidence. "Or what?" Tyler's deep voice came from her left. "You'll wave your stick at us?" Ethan's laugh came from the right. "Hey, everyone, Watch this. It'll be epic. The familiar sound of his phone camera starting made Amira's stomach tighten. Rough hands grabbed her shoulders, pushing her forward. The heat of the fire grew stronger. Someone, Tyler, by the grip strength, knocked her cane aside. "Careful there, blind girl," Chase taunted. "Fire's pretty hot. Better watch your step." The crowd had gone quiet, waiting for the show. Amira could hear Leah's voice in the distance, calling out in protest, but she was too far away. Another push brought Amira closer to the fire's heat. Her heart raced, but her mind was clear. She could hear Chase's breathing to her right, smell his cologne. Tyler's heavy presence was behind her, while Ethan's excited whispers came from slightly further back. Just like training. Track their positions. Use their movement against them. Chase's hand reached for her arm. She heard the rustle of his jacket. Felt the air shift. Perfect. In one fluid motion, Amira sidestepped, her hand catching his wrist, just as her father had taught her. She twisted, using Chase's own momentum to pull him off balance. His surprised grunt confirmed she had him. "What the—" Chase started, but Amira was already moving. She dropped her weight, pulling down and forward while sweeping her leg back. Chase's feet left the ground. The impact of his body hitting the dirt sent vibrations through the earth she could feel through her bare feet. The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Holy shit." Tyler lunged forward. His footsteps were heavy, predictable. Amira pivoted, blocking his grab with her forearm and pushing him back. He stumbled, cursing. "Someone get this on video!" a voice called out. "Already am," Ethan replied, excitement making his voice crack. Chase groaned from the ground. "My wrist! You crazy by—" "Choose your next word carefully." Amira cut him off, her voice steady. She had retrieved her cane and stood in a ready stance, just as she'd practiced countless times in her backyard. The party had gone completely silent except for the crackling fire and Chase's labored breathing. Amira could feel dozens of eyes on her, but for the first time, they weren't staring at her blindness. They were seeing her strength. "You're dead, Johnson," Chase spat. But his voice wavered. "You hear me? Dead." "No, I'm not," Amira replied calmly. "And everyone here just watched you try to push a blind girl into a fire. How's that going to look on Ethan's video?" More whispers rippled through the crowd. Footsteps approached quickly. Leah, slightly out of breath. "Amira, are you okay?" Leah's hand touched her shoulder. "I'm fine," Amira said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just teaching some boys about personal space." Chase was still on the ground, cradling his wrist. Tyler had backed away, his confident swagger gone. Ethan's camera was still recording, capturing every second of their humiliation. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a mix of shock and grudging admiration. Someone in the back started a slow clap, but it died quickly in the tense atmosphere. "My father's going to hear about this," Chase threatened, but his voice was small now, wounded pride mixing with physical pain. "Good," Amira replied. "Tell him everything. Tell him how brave you felt. 3 guys against 1 blind girl. Tell him what you were trying to do to me. I'm sure he'll be really proud." Monday morning sunlight streamed through the school's front windows as Amira walked through the doors, her cane moving in confident sweeps. For the first time since starting here, her shoulders weren't tight with anxiety. Students whispered as she passed, but these whispers were different, tinged with something like respect. "Everyone's talking about what happened," Leah said, falling into step beside her. "Chase wasn't even at football practice yesterday." Amira allowed herself a small smile. Maybe he needed time to nurse his bruised ego. The first period bell hadn't rung yet when a secretary's voice crackled over the intercom. "Amira Johnson, please report to Principal Harris's office immediately." The smile faded from Amira's face. Leah squeezed her arm. "Want me to come with you?" "No, I'll be okay," Amira said, though her stomach churned. She'd expected some fallout, but not this soon. The office carpet muffled her cane's taps as she entered. Voices drifted through Principal Harris's open door. Angry, demanding voices. She recognized Chase's father's baritone from football games. "Come in, Miss Johnson," Principal Harris called out. His voice had that forced cheerfulness she hated, the kind adults used when they were about to do something unfair. The office smelled of coffee and leather. Multiple people shifted in their seats as she entered, at least 3 others besides the principal, based on the sounds. "Please sit down," Principal Harris said. "We have Mr. and Mrs. Miller here, as well as our school resource officer." Amira's fingers tightened on her cane as she found the empty chair. A police officer. Her father's warnings about authority figures rang in her ears. "Miss Johnson," Mr. Miller spoke first, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "Would you care to explain why you assaulted my son Saturday night?" "I defended myself," Amira said clearly. "Chase and his friends were pushing me toward a bonfire. There are witnesses." "That's not what Chase told us," Mrs. Miller cut in. "He said you attacked him without provocation. You broke his wrist. He might miss the rest of the football season." Principal Harris cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the situation carefully. Several students have given conflicting accounts of what happened." "There's video," Amira said. "Ethan was recording the whole thing." "Yes, well," Principal Harris shuffled some papers. "The video we've seen only shows the actual incident, not what led up to it. And regardless of provocation, we have a zero-tolerance policy for violence." Amira's heart sank. She knew that tone. They'd already decided. Everything else was just ceremony. "Given the serious nature of Chase's injury," Principal Harris continued, "and considering the tension this has created, we feel it's best if you take some time away from school. For your own safety, of course." "You're suspending me?" Amira's voice cracked. "But they were the ones who—" "1 week," Principal Harris said firmly, "during which time we expect things to calm down. Officer Brooks here will escort you to clean out your locker." "This is completely unacceptable." Leah's voice suddenly burst from the doorway. She must have followed despite Amira's assurance. "Everyone knows what Chase and his friends did. They've been bullying her for weeks." "Young lady," Principal Harris's chair creaked as he stood, "this meeting is private. Please return to class." "No!" Leah's voice shook with anger. "This isn't right. They tried to push her into a fire. They filmed it for fun, and you're punishing her." "That's enough," Officer Brooks spoke for the first time, his boots heavy on the carpet as he stood. "Miss Parker, return to class now, or you'll be joining your friend in suspension." Amira heard Leah's frustrated exhale, then retreating footsteps. The silence that followed felt suffocating. "Your parents will be notified," Principal Harris said, his voice returning to that false pleasantness. "You can return next Monday. We trust there will be no further incidents?" The threat in his voice was clear. Amira stood slowly, her whole body trembling with anger and humiliation. "No, sir. No further incidents." The walk to her locker felt endless. Officer Brooks's presence behind her made her skin crawl. Students whispered as they passed, and this time the whispers held no respect, only pity. When she got home, her mother was waiting, having left work early after the principal's call. They sat in silence until Marcus's car pulled into the driveway. Amira heard his measured footsteps, the controlled way he opened and closed the front door. She could feel the fury radiating from him as he entered the kitchen. "Tell me everything," he said quietly. "Every detail." Amira recounted it all. The Millers' accusations, the principal's dismissal of the video evidence, the threat beneath his words. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, anger replacing humiliation. The scratch of Marcus's knife and fork against his plate was the only sound as they ate dinner. When he finally set them down, the soft clink seemed to echo through the kitchen. "If they want to play this game," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "then we'll play it my way." Marcus Johnson woke before dawn, his military habits kicking in automatically. He sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open, a fresh cup of black coffee steaming beside him. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the heating system. He opened a new document and began typing with methodical precision. Years of mission planning had taught him the value of organization. Each incident needed documentation. Dates, times, witnesses, evidence. He'd treat this like any other operation. His first target was the cafeteria incident. Marcus pulled up the viral video, his jaw clenching as he watched Chase and his friends terrorize his daughter. He noted every student visible in the background, every teacher who looked away. The timestamp showed 12:17 p.m. He marked down names. The morning stretched on as Marcus made calls. His voice remained calm and professional, the same tone he'd used in countless briefings. "Hello, this is Marcus Johnson, Amira's father. I understand your child was present during some recent incidents at the school." Some parents hung up. Others listened. A few talked. "Yes, I saw what happened at the pep rally." Mrs. Rodriguez, whose daughter was on the cheerleading squad, admitted quietly. "It was horrible." Chase grabbed the mic right in front of Coach Stevens, who just stood there laughing. Marcus recorded the conversation discreetly, thanking her for her honesty. 3 more calls yielded similar results. Parents who'd stayed silent out of fear or indifference were starting to speak up. By noon, he drove to the local coffee shop, where many high school students gathered. He sat in a corner booth, appearing absorbed in his laptop, while his trained ears picked up conversations. "Did you see what they did to that blind girl?" a teenage girl whispered to her friend. "My brother was at the bonfire. He said they were literally pushing her toward the fire before she fought back." Marcus's phone recorded it all. 20 years of covert operations had taught him how to blend in, how to become invisible while gathering intelligence. After lunch, he visited the school under the pretense of collecting Amira's missed assignments. His eyes scanned security camera locations, noting their angles. A quick conversation with a sympathetic secretary revealed the cameras had been working during every incident. "Those poor kids think their phones are the only cameras around," the secretary murmured, shaking her head. Back home, Marcus compiled the evidence methodically. The cafeteria video showed 5 different angles from students' phones. The pep rally had been officially recorded by the school's media club. He synced the timestamps, created backups. Leah Parker stopped by after school, carrying Amira's homework. Marcus invited her in, noting how the girl's hands shook with barely contained anger as she described what she'd witnessed. "I have videos, too," she said, pulling out her phone. "I started recording everything after the first cafeteria incident. I knew nobody would believe us without proof." Marcus nodded approvingly. The new clips showed Chase and his friends planning their pranks, laughing about how they'd get away with it because their parents were on the school board. As evening fell, Marcus made one final call to an old SEAL teammate who'd become a civil rights attorney in the city. They talked for an hour, discussing strategy, evidence requirements, and legal precedents. "Send me everything you've got," his friend said. "This isn't just about bullying anymore. We're looking at potential hate crimes, negligent supervision, civil rights violations." The kitchen grew dark as Marcus worked, illuminated only by his laptop screen. Amira's footsteps approached, her cane tapping softly against the floor. "Dad?" she said quietly. "You've been at this all day." "Almost done, sweetheart," he replied, his fingers still typing. "Just putting the pieces together. Will it make a difference?" The doubt in her voice made his heart ache. "Truth always makes a difference," he said firmly. "Sometimes it just needs help coming to light." He continued working after she went to bed. cross-referencing statements, organizing video clips chronologically. The evidence painted a clear picture, not just of bullying, but of systematic harassment enabled by negligent adults. Near midnight, Marcus added the final piece, a compilation of social media posts from Chase and his friends, bragging about their actions, mocking Amira's disability. Their arrogance had left a digital trail a mile wide. He saved everything to multiple secure drives, encrypted the files, and created backups. The habits of protecting sensitive intelligence died hard. The clock struck midnight as Marcus finally closed his laptop. The house was silent, but his mind hummed with purpose. Everything was in place. The evidence, the witnesses, the legal framework. He allowed himself a hard smile in the darkness. Now the truth comes out, he whispered to himself. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Marcus pulled into the local newspaper office. Amira sat in the back seat, fingers nervously tracing the handle of her cane, while Danielle reached back to squeeze her shoulder reassuringly. The Riverside Chronicle read the weathered sign above the entrance. Marcus carried a thick manila envelope under his arm as they walked inside. The office smelled of coffee and printer ink, with the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. "I'm here to see Angela Ruiz," Marcus said to the receptionist, his voice steady and professional. "We have an appointment." Reporter Angela Ruiz met them in the conference room, her dark eyes sharp and alert as she took in the family. She'd been covering local news for 15 years, and something in Marcus's voice when he'd called had caught her attention. "Thank you for meeting with us," Marcus began, sliding the envelope across the table. "What I'm about to show you isn't just about bullying. It's about systematic harassment of a disabled minor, enabled by those who should have protected her." Angela opened the envelope, spreading out printed screenshots, transcripts, and USB drives. Her expression grew more serious as Marcus walked her through the evidence, his military precision making the presentation clear and compelling. "Here's the cafeteria incident," he said, playing one video. The sound of cruel laughter filled the room. Amira's hands tightened on her cane, and Danielle wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "And this is from the pep rally," Marcus continued, his voice controlled but tight with anger. "Notice how the teachers are visible in the background, doing nothing." Angela took careful notes, her pen moving quickly across her notepad. "The school's response?" she asked. "They suspended Amira." Danielle spoke up, her nurse's composure cracking slightly. "After she defended herself at the bonfire." "Because the bullies' parents are on the school board," Marcus added, pulling out more documents. "Here are their social media posts bragging about their influence." Angela leaned forward, studying a transcript. "You have witness statements?" "7 parents willing to go on record," Marcus confirmed, "plus 18 student witnesses, and a civil rights attorney ready to file suit." The morning light grew stronger outside as they continued. Angela asked pointed questions, her journalistic instinct recognizing the magnitude of the story. This wasn't just about one incident, it was about power, privilege, and the failure of institutions. "The story runs tomorrow," Angela finally said, gathering the evidence carefully. "Front page. We'll need to interview Amira, if she's willing." She looked directly at the teenager. "Your voice matters in this." Amira nodded slowly. "I want to speak," she said quietly, but firmly. "I'm tired of being silent." They spent another hour with Angela, Amira describing her experiences while Marcus and Danielle provided supporting details. The reporter's fingers flew across her keyboard, capturing every word. By late afternoon, word was already spreading through town. Marcus noticed the whispers as they stopped for groceries. Phones buzzed with text messages as parents and students who'd seen the family at the newspaper office spread the news. "Did you hear about the Navy SEAL dad? They're going after the school board. I heard they have videos." The grocery store clerk, whose daughter attended the high school, gave them a quiet nod of support. "It's about time someone stood up to those families," she murmured as she bagged their items. At home, the evening settled around them like a held breath. Danielle cooked dinner while Marcus helped Amira with her homework, maintaining their routine despite the building tension in town. The tick of the kitchen clock seemed louder than usual. After dinner, Marcus and Amira sat on the front porch, listening to the crickets and distant traffic. The air was cool, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. Amira's cane rested across her lap, her fingers absently running along its length. "Dad?" she said softly. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Will it really work?" Her voice held equal measures of hope and doubt. Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He thought about missions overseas, about long operations where justice seemed distant, but eventually arrived. He thought about the evidence carefully gathered, the witnesses ready to speak, the truth finally emerging into light. "Justice doesn't always come easy," he said finally, his deep voice carrying the weight of experience. "But it always comes." They sat together in the gathering dusk, father and daughter, while across town, phones continued to buzz with messages about tomorrow's newspaper and the story that would change everything. The morning sun had barely risen when the local news anchor's voice filled the Johnsons' living room. "Breaking news this morning as disturbing evidence emerges of systematic bullying at Riverside High School," she began, her professional tone carrying an edge of disbelief. Marcus sat on the couch, remote in hand, while Danielle prepared breakfast in the kitchen. Amira perched on the edge of her chair, listening intently as her story unfolded on the morning news. Exclusive footage obtained by the Riverside Chronicle shows multiple incidents targeting a blind student, the anchor continued. The first video played, the cafeteria scene. Even with the faces blurred, Chase Miller's distinctive varsity jacket was unmistakable as he knocked Amira's tray to the floor. Danielle paused her cooking, spatula frozen mid-flip. The eggs sizzled quietly in the pan as the news continued. The victim, 16-year-old Amira Johnson, is the daughter of decorated Navy SEAL Marcus Johnson, the anchor revealed. The station cut to Angela Ruiz's interview footage from yesterday, showing Amira speaking with quiet dignity about her experiences. "I just wanted to get an education," Amira's recorded voice stated clearly. "Instead, I became their entertainment." The morning shows across all local channels picked up the story. Phones throughout Riverside buzzed with notifications as the Chronicle's online article went live. Social media exploded with shares and angry comments. In the Miller household across town, Chase slumped lower on his couch as his mother watched the news in horror. His phone wouldn't stop vibrating with messages from friends and teammates. The pep rally video was playing now, his voice echoing through speakers across the city as he mocked Amira's blindness. "How could you?" his mother whispered, but Chase had no answer. His father paced in the kitchen, already on the phone with their lawyer. Back at the Johnson home, Marcus's phone rang. It was Angela Ruiz. "The response is overwhelming," she reported. "The school board chairman just called an emergency meeting for tomorrow." More footage played on the TV, students speaking anonymously about witnessing the bullying, parents confirming they'd complained to the administration with no result. The story grew beyond Amira, exposing a pattern of protected privilege in the small town. "This is a clear failure of leadership," a civil rights attorney stated on screen. The Americans with Disabilities Act exists precisely to prevent this kind of discrimination. Danielle finally remembered the eggs, quickly scraping the slightly burnt breakfast onto plates. The kitchen filled with the smell of toast and coffee as the news continued to roll. Online comments flooded local news sites. "Those boys should be expelled." "Where were the teachers?" "Shame on the school board." "Thank you for speaking up, Amira." At the homes of Tyler and Ethan, Chase's accomplices, similar scenes played out. Parents who had defended their sons' pranks, now watched in shock as the full scope of their cruelty was exposed. The carefully edited videos Marcus had gathered left no room for excuses. The school principal's office phone rang nonstop. Parents demanded action. School board members scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. And local politicians issued hasty statements about taking this very seriously. Chase tried calling his friends, but no one answered. His social media accounts filled with angry messages. The football team group chat exploded with teammates arguing about whether to defend him or cut ties. His college scholarship hopes seemed to evaporate with each passing hour. In the Johnsons' kitchen, Amira sat at the breakfast table, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. The morning news anchor's voice shifted to a softer tone. But perhaps the most inspiring part of this story is Amira Johnson herself, the anchor said. Despite facing daily harassment, this remarkable young woman maintained her dignity and courage. With the support of her father, a decorated Navy SEAL, she learned to defend herself and speak up against injustice. They played a clip of Amira from yesterday's interview, her head held high as she spoke. "I want other disabled students to know they don't have to accept cruelty. We deserve respect. We deserve to feel safe at school." Danielle watched as a trembling smile spread across her daughter's face. The first real smile in weeks. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed Amira's hand. Local disability rights advocates are calling Amira Johnson an inspiration, the anchor continued. Her story has sparked important conversations about accountability in our schools. Amira's hand tightened around her mug as she heard her name spoken with admiration on television for the first time. The warmth of the tea matched the warmth spreading through her chest. Not pride, exactly, but relief. Relief that finally someone was listening. Relief that finally the truth was being told. The school board meeting room buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, the 7 board members sat behind their elevated desk, faces grave. Amira sat in the front row between her parents, her white cane across her lap. Behind them, scattered whispers filled the room as Chase Miller and his friends huddled with their families on the opposite side. Their expensive lawyers shuffled papers nervously. Board Chairman Richard Peterson cleared his throat. "This emergency session will come to order." His gavel crack echoed through the suddenly silent room. "We're here to address serious allegations of systematic bullying at Riverside High School." Marcus Johnson stood first when called, his Navy SEAL posture commanding immediate attention. He moved to the podium with measured steps, placing a thick folder before him. The room grew impossibly quieter. "My daughter Amira transferred to Riverside High School 2 months ago," Marcus began, his voice steady and controlled. "Since then, she has been systematically targeted, mocked, and physically harassed by Chase Miller and his friends." Chase's father shifted in his seat, whispering urgently to his lawyer. But Marcus continued, methodically presenting his evidence. Security camera footage from the cafeteria played on the wall screen, showing Chase stealing Amira's cane. Next came cell phone videos from multiple angles of the pep rally incident. "Mr. Miller claims his son was just joking around," Marcus said, his calm tone carrying an edge of steel. "I ask you, is this what passes for humor in Riverside?" He played the audio of Chase mocking Amira's blindness, the cruel laughter echoing through the room. Chase's mother stood up, her voice shrill. "This is being blown out of proportion. They're teenagers!" Marcus turned slightly toward her, his expression unchanging. "Ma'am, I've served in war zones. I know the difference between teenage pranks and targeted cruelty. Your son recorded and shared videos of himself humiliating a blind girl. He took away her mobility aid. He pushed her toward a fire pit." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Chase sank lower in his seat as Marcus played more footage. Hallway incidents, online posts, witness testimonies. The evidence mounted methodically, like a military operation cutting off all escape routes. The school's response was to suspend my daughter for defending herself, Marcus concluded. That ends tonight. As he returned to his seat, Chase's lawyer scrambled to the podium, citing precedents about teenage behavior and school discipline. But his practiced arguments felt hollow against Marcus's precision. Then came Amira's turn. She rose slowly, her father guiding her to the podium. The room held its breath as she gripped the edges of the wooden stand. "I'm 16 years old," she began, her voice soft but clear. "I was born blind, but I've never felt more disabled than I have at this school." She described the daily torments, the whispers, the stolen cane, the constant fear of being filmed and mocked. "The worst part wasn't the bullying," Amira continued, her voice growing stronger. "It was how everyone watched and did nothing. Teachers walked away. Students laughed. When I finally stood up for myself, I was punished." In the audience, several teachers looked down at their hands. A few students wiped tears. "I'm not here for revenge," Amira said. "I'm here because the next disabled student who comes to this school deserves better. We all deserve better." As she returned to her seat, the crowd's silence felt different, heavy with shame and recognition. Witnesses came forward next. Leah Parker described watching the cafeteria incidents. Other students admitted their role in sharing the videos, their voices shaking with regret. A former teacher revealed she'd reported Chase's behavior multiple times, but was told to let boys be boys. Chase's father tried to interrupt, but Chairman Peterson silenced him with a sharp gavel crack. The evidence was overwhelming, the pattern undeniable. The board members conferred quietly while the room waited. Chairman Peterson's voice cut through the tension. "All those in favor of immediate expulsion for Chase Miller, Tyler Roberts, and Ethan Cooper, raise your hand." 7 hands rose without hesitation. "By unanimous vote," Peterson announced, "the 3 students are hereby expelled from Riverside High School, effective immediately. Their transcripts will reflect the reason for expulsion." Gasps rippled through the room. Chase's mother burst into tears, while his father's face turned red with rage. Tyler and Ethan's families sat frozen in shock as the reality sank in. Their sons' futures, once so certain, now carried a permanent mark. The gavel cracked one final time, but it was nearly drowned out by the eruption of voices. Parents pulled out phones, already spreading the news. Chase and his friends slumped in their seats, their varsity jackets suddenly looking like costumes rather than armor. In the front row, Amira reached for her father's hand. For the first time since starting at Riverside High, she sat with her head held high, her cane resting easily across her lap. The whispers around her no longer carried mockery, only justice. The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside High's empty football field. Chase Miller stood at the fence, gripping the chain link with white knuckles. His red varsity jacket, once a symbol of his status, hung loose and unworn in his other hand. Inside the school's main office, Principal Stevens was meeting with yet another college recruiter. Through the window, Chase could see the man shaking his head, gathering papers into his briefcase. That made 3 scholarship offers withdrawn this week alone. His phone buzzed, another email from State University. He didn't need to read it to know what it said. The same message had come from 6 other schools. After careful consideration, regret to inform you, admission status has been rescinded. At home that evening, Chase sat at the kitchen table while his parents argued with their lawyer in the living room. Words like damages and settlement drifted through the walls. His father's company had already asked him to take a leave of absence. The publicity was bad for business. Across town, Ethan Ward deleted his social media accounts for the 3rd time. Every post he'd ever made mocking Amira had been dug up and shared. His inbox overflowed with angry messages. The likes and followers he'd once craved now felt like a noose around his neck. His gaming channel, once popular with thousands of subscribers, was flooded with comments calling him a coward and a bully. Tyler Briggs sat alone in his bedroom, staring at the football scholarship letter he'd received just 2 months ago. Now it was worthless paper. His mother had stopped trying to make him come down for dinner. The weight of consequences pressed down on him like the heaviest tackle he'd ever taken. But this time, he couldn't get back up. Meanwhile, at the Johnson house, Amira sorted through a growing pile of letters and emails. Support poured in from disability rights groups, anti-bullying organizations, and fellow students across the country. Her story had struck a nerve, becoming a symbol of standing up to systemic cruelty. "Another invitation," Danielle said, opening an envelope at the breakfast table. "The community center wants you to be the keynote speaker at their disability awareness event next week." Amira ran her fingers over her cane, remembering how it felt when Chase had stolen it. "Do you think I should do it, Dad?" Marcus set down his coffee cup. "That's your choice, Amira. But remember, your voice matters now more than ever." The lawsuits hit the following day. 3 families filed civil suits against Chase, Tyler, and Ethan's families for emotional distress and discrimination. The school board faced its own legal troubles for enabling the behavior. Local businesses pulled sponsorship from the football program. At the grocery store, Chase's mother abandoned her shopping cart when other parents started whispering and pointing. Tyler's father, once the proud announcer at every football game, stopped going to his favorite diner after the owner asked him to leave. Ethan's parents put their house up for sale, talking about moving to a different town. The boys who had once ruled the school hallways became ghosts. Chase stopped leaving his house entirely after a group of students filmed him at the mall, mocking him the way he'd mocked Amira. The video went viral within hours, but across town at the community center, a different story was unfolding. The main hall was packed for the disability awareness event. Local news cameras lined the back wall. Amira sat backstage, running her fingers over her note cards one last time, though she'd memorized every word. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his hand gentle on her shoulder. Amira nodded, gripping her cane with newfound confidence. The same cane that Chase had once stolen was now a symbol of her strength. The audience fell silent as she took the stage. Under the bright lights, Amira found her place behind the podium. Her cane tapped softly against the wood as she adjusted her position. "My name is Amira Johnson," she began, her voice clear and strong. "2 months ago, I was the girl being mocked in viral videos. Today, I'm here to talk about dignity, justice, and the power of standing up for yourself." In the front row, Marcus watched his daughter with pride swelling in his chest. Gone was the girl who had cried in bathroom stalls. In her place stood a young woman whose voice commanded respect. "Bullies thrive on silence," Amira continued. "They count on victims staying quiet, on bystanders looking away, on authority figures making excuses. But silence is a choice. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is break it." The audience leaned forward, captivated. Among them sat Leah, who now led an anti-bullying group at school. Several teachers who had once looked away were there too, their expressions thoughtful and ashamed. "My father taught me that strength isn't about physical power," Amira said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "It's about standing your ground, speaking your truth, and refusing to let anyone dim your light." Marcus sat straighter in his chair, his military bearing softened by fatherly pride. The audience hung on every word as Amira described her journey from victim to advocate. Her story was no longer just about bullying. It had become a testament to resilience, justice, and the power of fighting back with dignity. The morning sun warmed their faces as Marcus and Amira Johnson walked side by side down Maple Street. Their footsteps fell into an easy rhythm, Marcus's measured stride matching Amira's confident pace. Her white cane tapped steadily against the sidewalk, each sound a reminder of how far they'd come. "Remember when I used to hate this sound?" Amira asked, sweeping her cane in a practiced arc. "I thought it announced my weakness to everyone." Marcus smiled, noting how straight his daughter's shoulders were now. "And what does it tell people these days?" "That I'm coming through," Amira said with a small grin. "And they better clear the way." They passed the park where they'd spent countless mornings training. The grass still held impressions from their footwork. The bench where Marcus had first taught her to listen for approaching steps. The open space where she'd learned to turn vulnerability into strength. "I used to think being a SEAL meant my most important battles would be overseas," Marcus continued, his voice low and thoughtful. "Protecting our country, fighting the big fights. But sometimes the most crucial battles happen right here at home." A group of joggers approached from the opposite direction. Without prompting, they moved aside respectfully, giving Amira plenty of space. No whispers, no stares, just the courtesy she'd always deserved. "You taught me how to fight," Amira said, navigating around a fire hydrant she'd long since memorized. "But more importantly, you taught me when to fight." Marcus nodded, remembering the controlled fury he'd felt watching those viral videos of his daughter being tormented. How he'd channeled that rage into strategic action instead of blind revenge. "There's power in precision," he said, "in choosing your moments." They turned onto Oak Avenue, where the Saturday morning buzz of lawn mowers and children playing filled the air. Amira lifted her face to the sun, feeling its warmth. Her cane swept confidently from side to side, no longer a symbol of shame, but an extension of her independence. "The other day," she said, "someone at school asked if I wished things had gone differently. If I wished Chase and his friends had never bullied me." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And what did you tell them?" "I said that while I wouldn't choose to be bullied, I'm proud of who I've become because of what happened. Every tap of this cane reminds me that I'm stronger than anyone thought I could be." She paused, turning her face toward her father. "Especially me." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment, passing the spot where Chase Miller had once sat in his car, watching their house. Now his family's home stood empty, a "for sale" sign swaying in the breeze. Justice had come in its own time, in its own way. Marcus thought about his upcoming deployment. In the past, leaving Amira had torn at his heart, knowing she faced a world that often couldn't see past her disability. But now, watching her walk with such confidence, hearing the strength in her voice when she spoke at events, he knew things had changed. The morning light caught the silver tip of Amira's cane as they approached the crosswalk at Cedar Street. Traffic hummed nearby, cars slowing respectfully as they noticed the father and daughter waiting to cross. Amira's hand found Marcus's arm, not out of necessity, but connection. Her head tilted slightly, listening to the pattern of vehicles with practiced attention. The same skills that had once helped her detect approaching bullies now guided her safely through each day. "I can hear it, Dad," she said confidently, squeezing his arm. "I know when to step." I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.